chaos, tormentor of my dreams, and its eyes have all the clamoring. The disturbances come hammering, quoth the cladicalism. Mine the Goddard de Marang, the apocalypse attacking, deep into the darkness gripping. Immiseration, the dispensability dislocation discording. I discovered the upheavals. Instead, I uncovered the madness. Remembering men degruntled, raving insurrections. The despair smiled, and the madmen never locking. Going out of my mind. Okay, gotta do this. Hello, welcome back to the Three Orcs channel. This is David, and today I'm going to cover the Temple of Elemental Evil bad guys. All the bad guys in the campaign that's moving behind the scenes of the temple itself. From the temple to Nulb, all the way to the City of Verbobonc. So if you're a player, these are spoilers. You do not watch this video because I'm going to cover every single bad guy, every Temple of Elemental Evil agent in the area. This is something that none of the modules cover, that many DMs talk about over the years, that suggest that you do things like this, but nobody's ever actually put pen to paper to figure this all out, except for maybe a few NPCs here and there. But I went ahead and created quite a few of them and grabbed some from different sources. D&D had a huge impact on my life. I started playing in grade school after Star Wars came out in 1977, where I started a gaming club that led to D&D. At the time, I would be found in the classroom, keeping my head low, buried in a fantasy book. The D&D Blue Box set changed and consumed my life. Quickly after that, I bought the AD&D Player's Handbook by Gary Gygax, which had a massive influence on me. I highly recommend these books to read. Rise of the Dungeon Master, Gary Gygax and the Creation of D&D by David Kushner and Corinne Sadmi. This graphic novel is a quick read, and it is a brief glimpse into the life of Gary Gygax, the creation of D&D, the controversy, and the effects that the game had on pulp culture and many lives that it touched. The next book is Empire of Imagination, Gary Gygax and the Birth of Dungeons & Dragons by Michael Whitwer. I found that this biography is a series of fictional vignettes about events in Gary Gygax's life, loosely connected by nods at context, which is more of a inspired by true events story than an actual biography. And the last one is Of Dice and Men, the story of Dungeons & Dragons and the people who play it by David Ewalt. This was a fun read about the history of Dungeons & Dragons. The author injects that some scenes from one of his own D&D campaign, which I liked, but sometimes it strayed a little bit too far from the subject and covered a lot other role-playing games. I was really happy to identify with a lot of the scenes in this book, and not just from playing the game. You can find my affiliate links down below. By all means, not all NPCs in the area that work with the Temple of Elemental Evil, but only the important ones that I developed for my campaign. As I run my campaign, I continue to create more as needed, depending on where the players are in the campaign. So I'm going to cover quite a bit here. I'm going to cover all the agents in Nulb from the Temple of Elemental Evil. They visit Nulb and they work with a lot of pirates and merchants in the area and traders to supply. They provide the temple with provisions, recruitment of new monsters and NPCs, and vital supplies. But most of this help comes from elsewhere. It comes from the City of Divers and Verbobonc, because temple, as I said many times before, does not exist in a vacuum. They need outside assistance. So that help is going to have to come from somewhere. And they're trying to keep this under wraps. They don't want to tip their hand before they're ready. And so they're keeping their activities in the Viscount of Verbobonc low and in the Gnarly Forest. Because if they tip off the good guys, they're going to come and investigate to find out what they're up to and then squash it before it can get off the ground. To be able to pull something like this off, they're going to need some nobles from Verbobonc and divers to help them provide the support needed. They have the power to be able to keep their support under wraps where nobody else would notice. And the only kind of NPCs in the world capable of doing something like that would be like an Assassins or a Thieves Guild or a noble or a powerful merchant. So these organizations and these important NPCs would come from the big cities. And that way they can be their eyes and ears and also stir the pot, cause trouble, cause confusion among the forces of good. So that have their eyes look elsewhere until it's too late. And then they're going to go ahead and move on with their plans from there. And then they're going to be ready to make their move against the City of Verbobonc. So we're going to cover quite a bit of it here. I put a lot of this stuff in World Anvil to keep it organized for my campaign. I think the best place to start will be with the organization of the Temple of Elemental Evil in Nulb. So I have an article for Nulb. I'm going to go through this pretty quick because there's so much to cover. So the original module of Nulb covered only 4 locations, buildings in Nulb itself. But over the years, a lot of DMs flushed it out and filled it out. Even the Goodman Games module, Temple of Elemental Evil 5th edition, only keyed maybe a half a dozen buildings, and that's it. And as you can see from the numbering system, there's over 53 locations here. And they're all, in my campaign, they're fully keyed. No matter what building the players go to, there's an NPC there with backstory and everything. And so that way I'm prepared when I run the campaign. Also, I created maps of some of the important locations like the Boatman's Tavern and Nulb Market, because most likely the players will end up there. Also, that tavern is where the pirates like to hang out and stay, because it's right next to the docks there. And so the pirates, constantly moving up and down the river, delivering supplies and slaves, stop here often as their home base. Well, and then they move out again to cause trouble, making their way back to Divers or the City of Verbobonc. Merchants or slavers will actually use caravans to cross the gnarly forest. That's a risky endeavor with the gnarly rangers and druids, but they are able to pull that off by secrecy, pretending to be a merchant, more like smugglers. And so a lot of the times the Scarlet Brotherhood would be involved, or one of the slaver gangs or slaver organizations in the Wild Coast. And so they'll use the path through the gnarly forest to get here. So this is a hub. This is a hub of all traffic coming and going to the Temple of Elemental Evil. And this village tries to keep things on the low. In the article I created for Nulb, this is the piece of artwork I used to show the players when they first get there. And I have another video where I reviewed Nulb and how I keyed it. But we're going to look at specifically at the NPCs there that are working with the Temple of Elemental Evil, which I covered in that other article too. So if you want more details about these players for the Temple of Elemental Evil, I suggest you watch that video. But in this one, I have Lady Llmags Men. Lady Llmag is the mayor of Nulb. And under her chain of command is Sir Pale Anders, which is a fallen paladin, and Monroe, a captain. Finley and Reeves is the lieutenants, and Cafferty and Graves are the sergeants. So they're the militia and the guards of this village, and she has full control over all that. Lady Llmag was once a chaotic evil high priest of the Greater Temple of the Temple of Elemental Evil. She served the Elder Elemental God with passion and zeal. After the temple's defeat, the Elder Elemental God imprisonment, Llmag lost much of her own personal power. She could no longer cast any clerical spells over 2nd level. Rather than remain inside the dangerous temple, she retreated to Nulb and took over as the leader of the village, all the while maintaining her connections with the Greater Temple. So she has connections there. She moved into Eastholm, which is the name of her manor there in Nulb. And she's got some background on what she's been up to here. But over the years, Llmag has become lawful. This is largely due to experience as a village leader. She's responsible for keeping a flow of supplies moving into the temple and settling disputes among the village of Nulb. All this has given to her an appreciation of law and forced her to reconsider her old paradigms. She continues to support the temple, but only because she believes she can use that forces to further her own gains. Llmag is interested in taking over much of the land and becoming queen of a sizable domain. Llmag will never worship the Elder Eye again. Should the Elder Eye find his freedom, Llmag will either flee or fight if she feels she stands a chance against the weakened god. She found a cache of raven cloaks. It's a magic item, and she has a ring of bird control. She used these to control dozens of ravens that swarm around Nulb. I use these as scouts in the area as far as the village of Hamlet. So during the campaign, the players might see ravens in the sky. And if she has some reason to want to spy on the players because of their activities, she can use these ravens to do that. But at the beginning of the campaign, of course, he's unaware of them, so that's not going to happen until probably when they show up at Nulb, or word gets back to her somehow of the players' activities, depending on what the players did. Llmag is easily over 60 years old. She's got several potions of longevity, but thanks for several potions of longevity, she appears at least 30 years younger. Black long hair, straight, dual class, Raven familiar. She's got some magic items like the Sword of Earth. I got her spells here, and she's got her organization here of relationships. So she's towards Nulb. He is a supply provider and a temple agent, and he's considered important to her. Nulb actively recruits thugs and monsters to join the cult of the Crushing Wave with the water prophet Belsornig. She's also got a relationship with Belsornig. Lady Llmag provides supplies to the Temple of the Elemental Evil. She also has one with Yatik, the village priest of the cult of Elemental Evil. He's important. He's the one priest here with a chapel in town that the players can go see and partake in the services that he offers. The Temple of Elemental Evil, the cult of Elemental Evil is started off as a neutral cult. It's a legitimate neutral cult. It's more like along the lines of the old faith, a cult for nature. They actually worship the elemental of nature, fire, earth, water, and fire. And also, Llmag publicly attends his services. So it's another way for the players to meet her at one of the services too. I like to connect all the NPCs in my campaign, so they don't all exist in a vacuum. Okay, back to her men. Sir Pales Anders is another temple agent. He was born to a noble family in Valuna. He grew strong and tall and learned the meaning of honor early on. His father taught him that nothing was more valuable than his word. Once you lose your word, you've lost everything. Pale was a natural choice for knighthood. He learned fast and was well liked by both his peers and his masters. When forces marched upon Valuna to confront the horrors of the Temple of Elemental Evil, Pale assembled a company of his own to join the effort. So he was there to fight, to help. But during the Battle of Emerald Meadows, you can find my video on my channel there, was long and bloody but decisive. Still, there would be many more skirmishes to come, along with the final sacking of the temple itself. It was during one of those skirmishes that several members of Pale's company was given hostage by the enemy. They were not just fellow soldiers to Pale, they were childhood friends, folks who trusted him, folks who didn't have his training and likely would never have marched south. Perhaps the temple would have fared better if presented as a unified front, but such wasn't to be. As the forces from Valuna and Furundi pressed, the factions within the temple began to splinter and flee. The inevitable defeat of the temple was clear. Llmag was forced to recognize this even as her small force was gaining slow ground against Pale's company. She was fighting Pale. So it was Pale who wanted to save his childhood friends and Lady Llmag, who wanted to flee the field with her forces. They came to terms under a flag of parley. Lady Llmag agreed to release her prisoners under the condition that Pale's company disbanded and that Pale agreed to serve Llmag directly. The knight agreed, and his soldiers were released and told to march back to Valuna. But Pale's place was to remain in the Viscount of Verbobonc beside Lady Llmag. Bound by an odd sense of honor and fascination with Llmag, Pale remains. Over the years, his alignment has shifted, but he does remain lawful. The Lady Llmag's herald is a black raven over a white tabard, so he's going to wear it. She's going to have it. It's going to be on several of the buildings It's going to be on several of the buildings in Nulb, and also her guards will have that symbol on their vest or their armor or their shield. So the players will be able to recognize this and follow up on the herald. Heraldry has a lot to do with the medieval ages and also with my campaign because it helps identify organizations in the world. And it actually helps make things make sense. And then the next person on my list, I didn't fill out Monroe or Finley and Reeves and Cafferty and Graves. They're just standard lieutenants and sergeants. They can just ad-lib their characters. But I did pay careful attention to Carug. So Carug is half-orc. He's obviously a half-orc. He's grayish-tinged and leathery skin, a nose nearly non-existent, a nose that's nearly non-existent except for two large nostril openings. He's bald on the very top of his head, but black hair grows along. Okay, so I've got all that. Carug has been Lady Llmag's loyal henchman since the two served together in the Greater Temple. He didn't think twice about following her when she left the temple and established herself as Lady Llmag in Nulb. For years, Carug has acted as her right hand, assassinating targets at her command and bringing her information that allowed her to stay ahead of the enemies. Yeah, he's an assassin here. He's an actual cleric assassin. So this is a very dangerous character in the campaign against the players. But something has changed for Carug lately. He's still loyal, mostly. He hasn't done anything to betray Llmag, and he's become increasingly disillusioned with her leadership. Something has happened to the woman over the years. Once she was a fiery and temperamental, but now that coldness is inside of her. She's still ruthless, of course, but still spends her time writing proclamations and holding court in this rat-infested village of fishermen and fools. That's his idea. That's his outlook of it. Even worse, Carug can't remember the last time he saw Llmag practice her clerical arts or offering prayers of servitude to their shared demonic queen of fungi. It occurs to Carug and Llmag has lost her faith and no longer work to free the elemental god. And that disturbs him greatly. If forced to choose between Llmag and the Elder Eye, Carug doesn't know what he will do. Carug is the Houndmaster of Eastholm, the mansion that he lives in. He uses his ring of mammal control to exert over the kennel of war dogs. So he's really dangerous. He has a whole kennel of war dogs, like a mini army that he can take with him to move against the characters if he has to. Very dangerous character. He's level 4/6, cleric assassin, and he's got some spells. He's got a rope of entanglement, so he's pretty useful in his campaign. And he's considered important to Yatik here. So as you can see, I don't have separate articles for those other characters. I got Monroe. I got his stats here. He's got a Raven Cloak, and he's the captain of the guard for Lady Llmag. I got Finley and Reeves statted out in case I need them for the campaign, in case the players run into them and fight them. Cafferty, same thing. I got him ready to go. And the men-at-arms. There's 24 men-at-arms working for Lady Llmag. So that's her army. These men are all lawful evil. They are all disciplined, and they have seen combat before. So they're pretty experienced. They know the chain of command and expect to follow orders. So it's going to be hard for the players to fool them. The men-at-arms all wear black raven symbols over white tabards. 12 of them wear raven cloaks. They got patrol guards. So guard 1 is at the guardhouse. So I have the village keyed. We don't have to go into that. But it's all listed here when the players do get there. So that covers Lady Llmag. Let's move on to the next NPC that's important. Okay, I covered this in a Nulb article that I created, video, but the cult of elemental evil, the agents often visit Nulb, and there's two broad types that actually come here. One is NPCs who live inside the temple. They're the inside agents. And then there's NPCs who live outside the temple, outside agents. So the inside agents, they come out often to visit Nulb to do business. And basically, I got them all keyed for the different areas where they're from. This includes Commander Feldrin, Lieutenant Bronk, and his force. So that's the upper temple, side door. So real quick, Feldrin, who you could encounter in Nulb, he's the commander of the Temple Guard and Bandits upstairs in the location of Temple Room 243. Horned red skulls worked for the chest and back of the cloak of protection +2, so that's what he looks like. But Feldrin, sent by Supreme Commander Hedrack, is an emissary of the King of the Knolls of Gawawatar. That's what I added to my campaign. I actually added a Knoll fort in the southern Viscounty in the Mill Mountains. So he was sent there to gain assistance from them. That's why that right there will be the reason why the players, while they're moving through the Viscounty, will come across bands of gnolls. So he was sent there to get the king to get on board with the temple, to be in league with them, to work, to cooperate with them. So the gnolls are sent out to get prisoners and supplies and take it to the temple. But the gnolls keep half of it. So he was sent there to bargain. And and Lieutenant Bronk is a half-orc, but he hates Feldrin and desires to be in command instead. So there's a lot of ways to break up the organization of the Temple of Elemental Evil, but this is just one of them. But I brought him up because he can be found in Nulb, and he's I consider him one of the agents that's helping to supply and provide for the temple. So if captured, Feldrin does not speak unless forced, but he might tell of the greater temple and the 2 levels below and the fearsome things that they're in. And I have all his treasure. But what's important about this, though, for the campaign, he's responsible for the Greater Temple supply chain. Larith's lieutenant, Gaddis Void, is in charge of staging and sending wagons at the Moat House High Road bandit camp to deliver prisoners and supplies from the merchants and the farms they loot to Gaffred Patris at the hunting cabin, which is off the map of Nulb. It's not in Nulb. And which in turn is sent up the supply tunnel into the High Temple. In the module, there's a secret supply tunnel. Then I made a map, and I created a hunting cabin there, fully keyed, where the bandits deliver their loot to be taken up the tunnel. And I covered that in another video. We don't have to go over that again, but that's what his position is. So Larth the Beautiful at the Moat House, his lieutenant that you encounter in the T1 module, his name, I named him Gaddis Void, and he's in charge of staging and sending wagons from the Moat House to here. Okay, back to the agents that go to Nulb here. So we have, we covered that, right? We covered the upper temple area with Feldrin. So in addition to temple agents taking the night off to go, that's what they'll do. They'll take a little mini vacation, like a holiday, or taking the night off to go into Nulb and go drinking at the tavern and get into trouble and having fun, you know. And so besides them, the agents I'm mentioning, also the interfactions, cults, keeps to secure wealth and prisoners. These raiding parties will typically avoid entering Nulb. So the raiding parties that are out raiding the Viscounty won't go to Nulb. They'll take the secret tunnel entrance to get the supplies to the temple, because they don't want anybody tracking this stuff to the temple. They're still trying to keep this a secret. And if you just deliver stuff to Nulb, that's going to be easy to track and then find out what's going on here. But these groups may be found taking a night off, a night of leave in Nulb. And I have a list from the Earth Elemental Temple of some names and stats in case the players will come across them at the tavern or on the streets. I got a list of names for the Broken Tower Bandits I got from the Fire Temple, and outside agents now in the Fire Temple. And of course the Curate Tony and the Half-Priest Tubal, and they're all on the Temple of Elemental Evil module that you can look up yourself. Now the second half, the outside agents. Now the temple is a living, dynamic environment. It continues to grow and adapt depending on the circumstances. Page 43 of the module makes it clear that the temple factions are heavily invested in recruitment efforts. The efforts continue until the leader of that area in question is no longer alive or capable of pulling in any additional recruits. So every day we see new low-level humanoid recruits per faction. That's 7 new recruits a day, 49 recruits a week, which amounts to nearly 200 a month that are coming into the temple. Every 3 days, we'll see a new higher-level humanoid recruit per faction, and every week we'll see a new monster recruit per faction, like a troll or a giant or something. In short, there's a lot of new recruits coming into the temple on a regular basis. Each of the faction leaders within the temple must have a wide-ranging network of agents to keep the flow of recruits, prisoners, wealth, and information flowing into the temple. It's amazing that the forces of the good are only just beginning to realize that the temple's rising again. If this level of growth continues for more than 1 or 2 years, there's going to be serious army-sized trouble in Verbobonc. They're going to be a threat. So the current temple faction leaders will be identified as follows as they come visit Nulb. You got Romag. He's the prophet of Earth. He rarely visits the monastery now, but he lived there when he was first establishing the cult at the stone monastery that I created. The Sacred Stone Monastery is the Earth Temple. It's like the Moat House, but it's the Earth version of the Moat House in the Viscounty. Then there's Belsornig. He's the water prophet of the Water Temple. Then I have Kelno, the air prophet of the Air Temple. Alrrem is the fire prophet of the Fire Temple. Smigmal, Redhand, is of the Tower Bandits. Feldrin is the commander of the Temple Guard and Bandits with Lieutenant Brunk. Then we have Hedrack. He's the supreme commander of the Greater Temple. He's down below, level 3 and 4. Then there's Senshak. He's the high commander of the Great Temple, down below. But they will come visit. Leaders once slain can potentially be replaced. Okay, so some agents have agents of their own too. In other words, if Belsornig relies on an agent to get him information, that agent may be acting as a middleman, relying on the services of hired spies who know nothing about Belsornig, nor would Belsornig know anything about them. And that's going to happen a lot within the City of Verbobonc, as you'll see later. So, agents of Romag. So I have a list of all the agents that Romag uses. So first we have Romag, prophet, high priest of Earth. temple, and he leads a very powerful faction within the temple. This is not at all thanks to him, though. Barkanar was once the leader of the Earth Elemental Temple, and it was through Barkanar's effort that the Earth Temple grew as mighty as it did. Such is why Barkanar was promoted to the Greater Temple. Romag, while not incompetent, is in the fortunate position of having inherited an extensive network of agents, hence the City of Verbobonc and the Viscounty, and the village of Hamlet. In fact, those two traders there at the trader's post is his agents. Listed below are Romag's agents. They should be further developed in your campaign, which I have done. So, RSB, Recruit, Spy, Bandit. Dirk Rinks, he is the proprietor of one of the taverns in Nulb. I think it's the Boatman's Tavern. Cadix Nightshade. I created him. He's actually one of the raiders. You know how Lareth the Beautiful has his own bandit raiders raiding the Merchant Way? Well, these other outposts, the Earth outpost, the Fire, the Air, they have their own raiders too. They're raiding too throughout the Viscounty. So his is led by Cadix Nightshade, and Maris. They work together, and they have a training camp in the Cron Hills, in southern Viscounty, and they raid from the other side towards the Cron Hill side of the Viscounty. Then we got some more people here that I didn't fill out. We got somebody at the brothel and stuff like that. Okay, Belsornig. Belsornig is the prophet of water. He's a clever man with vast ambitions. He's got a large network of external agents. He's got Lady Llmag. She reports to him. Tolub, he is on one of the pirate ships. He's a worshiper, and he reports to Belsornig. And then we got more here. We got somebody in Divers. I should have pointed that out, actually. That's an agent in Divers. So if you've got a campaign and you got some going on in Divers with your characters, they could meet this spy here. He's an actual sage. And so anything that the players share with that sage will find its information to the Temple of Elemental Evil, to Belsornig. Then we got a noble lord. He's one of the lords. We got fighter, we got thief, we got a merchant. Players can come across this merchant as they're traveling around anywhere. We got a bandit. He used to be a paladin. And so if you come across, Galt is one of the bandits out there raiding. So the players will come across him. Then we have an innkeeper in southern Verbobonc. He passes off information to him too. A network of information. Okay, next is Kelno. Kelno is the prophet of air and had to take control of the weakened air temple after Alrrem was sacrificed to the nodes. Unfortunately for Kelno, he didn't know all of Alrrem's contacts, and thus his network is small. So he only has these two. Thurl Muraska, he's the knight of the Feathergale Spire Society. That's the air outpost out in the Viscounty. And then he's got Humphrey, which is a mercenary leader. So they got very little visibility out there. Thurl has an entire organization under him, though. That entire air cult location, which looks like a tower spire, and they ride those vultures around. And that's a pretty cool location. And I got a lot going on there. Then we got Alrrem, the fire elemental prophet. He fought in the Battle of the Emerald Meadows. He's well connected with many of the odd members of the temple. And though many of them fled after the disastrous battle, some few remain to be of help. Watt is a barman at the tavern in Nulb. There's an Afridi that works for him, so this could come into play later in the campaign because that's very powerful. You probably can only call upon him at when it's much needed and only a few or one time only thing, because the cost of asking that Afridi for help is probably great indeed. You got the Bandit Queen. She's located in Sandbenwich, which is in the Gnarly Forest. If your players end up in that area, you have to deal with her and her band of cutthroats. You have an assassin in Verbobonc. So that assassin, works for the Temple of Elemental Evil in the City of Verbobonc. And then you got, in southern Verbobonc, but they can be in the city too. Then you have a fire giant. So there's a gathering of giants in the Felortmill Mountains that's being put together also under a different leader, Aviwaz. And this fire giant actually reports to Alrrem. Gotta remember, he's the temple high priest of fire. So he's a fire giant. So I guess this particular fire giant worships that that temple, that fire elemental. Then you got a caravan guard. So this one, Zolby, he's just a caravan guard. So when he's, he rides along caravans, and I guess he's a spy. I guess he'll let know of the fire prophet when caravans are heading their way, so they can raid them. So he's like an inside man. Then you have a cleric and divers. So he probably has his own secret little shrine to the fire elemental, like a little chapel. And so he has probably a number of followers that worship the fire elemental god. Okay, now you have Smigmal. Redhand. He's deeply connected with bandits and assassins throughout the area. So the network of players under him, of agents under him, is an assassin and divers. So Sigurus is the 10th level assassin that the T1 module mentions, that at the end of the module, with Lara the Beautiful is slain, if the forces of Nulb find out about it, they send a 10th level assassin after the players. This is that NPC, and I got him fully keyed with his own article right there. So he actually directly reports to Smigmal Redhand. We got a fighter. He's a bandit. We got a couple thieves. One in Ostverk, the village of Ostverk down south, and another one in Verbobonc, the city of Verbobonc. We have somebody at the Knife Dive, another bandit, another guard in Banewatch, an assassin in Verbobonc, and another one in the Viscounty. The guild masters and divers. So that right there, that is the guild leader of one of the assassins guilds and divers, and he works directly with Smigmal Redhand. Let's take a look at him. Smigmal Redhand is a half-orc fighter assassin. C is the Leman of Ferenth, room 337 of the Temple of Elemental Evil, and leader of the band of brigands in the Outer Ruins, the Tower. Upon hearing noise in the basilica, it just tells you about what she does if the players come close to her at her location. But she disguises herself as an elf, and there's a lot of notes here about she's got a hat of disguise, and she's deeply connected with bandits and assassins in the area. And so she has this network of assassins and fighters and thieves and bandits, and they report to her. So whenever the temple needs anything like that to happen in Divers or Verbobonc, that's her job. Okay, back to the main article. Next one, number 6, Feldrin. Feldrin's list of contacts is limited, but he's working on gathering more. So one is a fighter, a caravan master. So there's an entire caravan out there with a caravan master, a leader, traveling through the Viscounty, up to no good. Probably as a spy, sending him information of caravan movements and maybe mounted borderer movements, what the Viscounty's up to. It's a great source of information there, a network of information and spies. He has a bandit and he has a fence. In southern Verbobonc, there's an 8th level thief, and that's a fence that they can get rid of loot that they procure. They can turn it into cast a coin. Okay, last one, Hedrack. Hedrack is an enormous list of contacts, including Uis, because he's a high priest of Uis. Below are a list of his agents. So we got Lady Llmag, who directly reports to him. We have Samkiel, a wizard in Verbobonc, a fighter, a lord in Sobbenwich. There's an old red dragon in the fire node, the actual fire node in the Temple of Elemental Evil. He also has one in the Wild Coast, a fighter thief in the Wild Coast. That's probably of a slavers guild. That's his direct connection right there to slaves, the slaver guild in the Wild Coast. And then you got a Duergar in the Underdark. So he has a connection in the Underdark, for this Duergar dwarf, for whatever purposes you can come up with. That's his connection. He also has in Knife Dive, the Archmage there, 18th level wizard. Obviously not one of the big wizards for the Circle of 8, but this is an evil one, and this one is secretly assisting the Temple of Elemental Evil from divers or narrow dive. So this funny thing about dungeons is you got these really powerful characters like an 18th level wizard. Traditionally with D&D, you got these powerful monsters or NPCs in the dungeon waiting for the players to show up to kill them. What use is that? I mean, I think it's smart here that this very powerful character with a tremendous amount of resources at his disposal, why would he be sitting around at the bottom of some dungeon? He would be much more useful in Nire Dive or Divers or Greyhawk City or Verbobonc, where you can really pull strings and really help the temple out. And obviously that's what's going on here. Then you have the Wild Coast, 15th level assassin. He's the grandfather. That right there is the name of a guildmaster for an assassin's guild in the Wild Coast. Probably has a lot to do with some sort of slavers organization. The slavers again. You can connect the slaver modules A1234 to this campaign. And these characters are from those slaver modules, the slaver organization. Okay, then you got somebody in the brothel in Nulb, a spy, information. So if the players show up there and whatever is said at the table or in the tavern or in the inn, all that information is going to be conveyed to these forces, the temple agents that we just covered. Ranos Devil and Llmag, they're the Hamlet, T1 module temple, village of Hamlet. The thief and the assassin that works at the trader's shop there, that's them. They report directly to Hedrack. So that's where I got that. I don't know, I know I probably misspoke before, but this is what I got listed here. Then we got Zert. So Zert is one of the NPC henchmen that the players can recruit in the T1 module in the Welcome Wents. One of the choices that the players can choose to recruit to go with them into the Mo House. Well, Zert's one of them. In fact, I have Zert meet with some temple agents outside of the tavern at night while the players are sleeping. And I have them roll to see if they sense it and maybe spy on what he's doing out there in the darkness. But he's actually reports to Hedrack. Okay, so we have other NPCs. We have the Riverguard Keep. Riverguard Keep is an old keep at the mouth of the river coming to Nulb, and it's an old fort that used to protect the tradeways there. Well, the bandits overtook it, and they run it under the guise of protection of the river. It's kind of like a racket, like the mafia racket of protecting your neighborhood. Well, same thing here. They protect the river, and they prey upon merchants up and down the river all the way up to the Nile Dive, and they bring supplies back to Nulb. So that's their undercover. As far as the Viscounty is aware of, that they're a legitimate organization protecting Nulb and protecting the river. They don't know that they're really bandits. And we have Tolub. So Tolub there, he's lord of the castle. Let's take a look at him. Oops. So Tolub, Captain Tolub, he's captain of the Red Gold. That's his ship. He's shaggy, he's boisterous, he likes to brawl. He runs Riverguard's Keep. Let me show you that on the map here. Okay, I'll bring up the bigger map so you can see what I'm talking about. There's Verbobonc, the city. This is a map I made for the eastern half of the Viscounty of Verbobonc to give you more detail. So we go east to the gnarly forest, and there's Emrides Run. So the pirates run up and down this run, down the river, past the swamps, the Fens of Tor, past all these villages in the Viscounty on the left. On the right is Twilight Falls inside the gnarly forest. And down south is Nulb. And if we zoom in on Nulb here, in the Fens of Tor, see the crossroads of Emrides Run? And then the low road and the high road? The low road and high road go to the village of Hamlet and the Moat House. So if you come to Nulb here, the river runs right through it. And at the mouth of where the intersection of the two rivers are, is the keep, Riverguard Keep. And so they're the ones that are preying on the river traffic. And this river, Emrides Run north, connects to the Velverdiva River up north here, just off the map. So currently his band is repairing the old castle and re-roofing it. It's a major task. And they claim their intention is to make River Keep their base for protecting their riverborne traffic from monsters and bandits. In truth, Tolub and his followers are themselves, they're pirates. Tolub and his gang work with smugglers leading to Jolliver Grimjaw to move stolen goods up and down the river. They stage attacks against riverboats that refuse to pay protection money. And they actively recruit thugs and monsters to join the cult of the Crushing Wave, which is the Water Temple. Occasionally, he has a meeting in Nulb for these reasons. A contact, like oversee a trade agreement with another temple agent. It's faster to meet in Tolb than travel all the way to the Temple of Elemental Evil through the secret tunnel. Or meet with the leader of bandits with slaves or supplies to provide. Or 3, discuss plans with Lady Llmag in Eastholm. 4, meet with Belsornig at the Boatman's Tavern and Nulb Market. So Tolub leads 40 river pirates. Only 1/4 of their crew is here with him at any given time. Half are out sailing on the river. And the rest are guarding his ship. Tolub's crew is detailed below. If Tolub is not here, his lieutenant, Grud Squint-Eye, probably is with an identical crew. So they both have their own ships, by the way. They have 2 ships. So I have them encountering the players all the time. Up and down the river, the players ever end up in that area. If Tolub recognizes the characters, he plays dumb again, he attacks, or does all this kind of stuff. So I got all that figured out here, and I got some quests down here at the bottom. And then on the right-hand side, I got his crew with some names and stuff, and I got where they're at. Like, if I want to know randomly where they're at in the campaign, I got this 1x6 chart I can use. And then I also have his ship right here, if you want to take a look at the ship. So the players, when they come across him in the ship along the river, this is what they're going to see. Oops. Right here. So I got their crew all, listed here, and I got a picture of the boat in case it's needed in combat, and more description here. Okay, next, Belsornig, high-ranking water cult leader here. He'll be here often visiting Nulb to meet one of his network of agents and underpriests. He will take pleasure in town at the waterside hostel, or the boatman's tavern, or the pit. The pit's like a gladiator pit, and that's fully keyed with some badass, really powerful NPCs that fight each other. And the players, if they ever, this is actually, that location's awesome. If players ever get captured, they'll be taken there to fight in the gladiator pits. Or I like to have that as an option. That way the players have a chance to rescue them or escape. It'll be much harder if the players ever got kidnapped or taken into the lower temple to be sacrificed or used as slave. It would be really hard to retrieve them anytime soon. It would be a lot easier, quicker for the players to recover players from the pit here in Nulb versus that. So that's why I like that place a lot. I think I made a map for that place too, but that's in my Nulb write-up. Then we have the Cult of the Black Earth, and the Cult of the Howling Hatred, and the Cult of the Eternal Flame. Just outside locations here in the Viscounty. Okay, I need to mention a really powerful bandit group. So there is a contract bandit group working with the temple. So far in the campaign, as probably a lot of you are aware, the particular bandits that the players ever encountered over the last 40 years in this campaign are bandits that work with the temple directly. Like Lareth the Beautiful at the Moat House. Those bandits are recruited by him and his men and trained to go raiding. Well, this group of bandits are an independent, well-organized organization of bandits that are located in Nulb. And they work with the Temple of Elemental Evil, but they are not of the Temple of Elemental Evil. So they're led by Nalin. Nalin is right there. That's this picture there. And I have a full background of where he's from and what he does, but basically, the characters are probably not going to be ready to tackle this group early on. They're really powerful, and it should be evident from the stories they hear during this campaign and sights they see along the low road. In fact, if played correctly, the Hangmen could inspire a level of fear to the characters. This bandit group is about 100 or less bandits in membership, and they grow more powerful every day. They're led by him, an extremely high-level fighter. He reached legendary status. He's very high-level, very powerful. It's true that he escaped from Valuna on the day he was to be hanged. That's why they call themselves the Hangmen. And so you can actually integrate that into the campaign. He made friends. There's rumors that he made a pact with devils, but to make his escape, but it's not true. He actually made a pact with a very powerful druid named Stonebridge. So Stonebridge is a true neutral who believes that the rise of the temple is necessary to maintain the balance. He sees too much civilization, too many cities, too much power vested in the hands of good and righteous men. Where are the beast among us? Where's the chaos running through the forest? Things like, that kind of guy. So those two work together, and they're very dangerous. They have a base outside of Nulb. It's called the Rock Gardens. And at the Rock Gardens, which is a natural cave south of Nulb, the Captain Ulrich is there, and another druid, and the lieutenant, some sergeants, and some guards. At the Moat House is Gaddis Void, there's a sergeant and 18 guards. At Pathway Abbey, at the old monastery, there's been there. They're at these different locations. They're at Riverguard Keep. They're on the village of Hamlet. The Rock Gardens are closest base to Nulb. Its place is named for the majestic mounds that can be found deep in the cave that runs underneath the portion of the river. a constant stream of waterfalls. It's a very interesting location. I don't remember if I ever showed this before, but let's go ahead and take a look at it. So I just took a map from, Googled it, and this map that's pretty popular lately. I keyed it in, so this is their main base. They hang out in Nulb, and they're up to no good in a lot of other locations in the Viscounty, but this is one of their main bases where they keep their personal treasure at and training. And so they have a lot of information and stuff here. This is another location to add to the campaign. Give players something to do to eliminate this organization too. Okay, let's go ahead and focus on the City of Verbobonc. I know there's a lot of you are here for this. So now that I kind of set the stage for Nulb and the organizations there, what's going on, we're gonna go ahead and look at what's going on behind the scenes here at the City of Verbobonc. Now, Lakash, he's really big. He's the one that's really behind a lot of things in the Temple of Elemental Evil in the City of Verbobonc. So Lakash is the quintessential smooth villain. He's the kind of villain who has dinner with the heroes before killing them. However, he is a control expert and does not kill where you can bend someone to his will. His specialization is to get people to do what he wants, all the while thinking that it was their idea. This is one of the people that the players see, one of the NPCs the players see at Jolly's Inn when they go meet Lady Eleanor. He's speaking to one of the minor court nobles, developing some secret plans that they're up to cause more disruption in the Viscounty. So Lakash is completely evil, enjoys disrupting people. He plays people like they're chess pieces and does not care about their suffering he inflicts. But all the while, he remains friendly and tries to portray the image of a good person. He has been inordinately successful in Verbobonc. As long as he thinks he can maintain his control, he continues to play the game. When he knows he is losing, he prefers a tactical retreat. He can deal death, though, and only does at the last resort. Dead people cannot be used. So as you can see on the right side, he's a 12th level wizard, enchanter. Okay, about his mission. He works for the cult of the Elder Elemental God under the orders of Hedrack, the Supreme Commander. He is to sow dissension between the humans of Verbobonc and the gnomes of the Cron Hills. That's his aim. That's his mission. He communicates with Hedrack, political and logistical information. He has some magic items I have him use, but which is mostly just for protection. But since he is such a high, powerful wizard, 12th level wizard, he has spells that will give them a scrying ability to communicate with Hedrack via magical means. So several months ago, a man named Lakash Quallad came to Verbobonc. He seemed to be a merchant from Divers, and he said that he wanted to ply his business here instead of his old home. The people of Verbobonc see Divers as a trading rival and welcomed him with open arms. He immediately set about showing off his wealth to make himself agreeable to the upper class of Verbobonc society and proved adept at this business. He formed a partnership with one of the gnome families of the Cron Hills and became a powerful merchant and guiding force in society. He is universally respected and periodically undertakes charitable work on behalf of the town. It's going to be really hard for the players to pin anything on him. This is all an act, of course. Lakash Quallad is an agent of the Temple of Elemental Evil and has come here to drive a wedge between the humans of the city and the gnomes of the Cron Hills. If no alliance is formed between those two parties in later years, when the temple gains more power, the priest of Zygomanti would be able to control Verbobonc and secure their power. So goal 1. A few weeks ago, Lakash began his master plot by creating little incidents that strained relations between the gnomes and the humans. The two races never really got along closely, so the tension slowly built around without anyone noticing. He's the one that's organizing a particular family of gnomes in the Cron Hills to play with their merchant caravans to market to the city of Verbobonc. They actually staged an empty caravan wagon and got attacked by gnomes and a hill giant wearing a necklace. And they also attacked the mounted border guards too. And he's behind all this. So with promises, a lot of promises to this family that was kind of needy at the time. So that family has an entire background. The house of gnomes, that the leader, she had a lot of reasons why she accepted help from this powerful merchant from Verbobonc. And she really doesn't know who he works for. and but he's using her to cause this disruption. And this is the sole behind the scenes cause of what's going on in the Viscounty, of all the events that you see in my other videos with the gnomes being persecuted and attacked in the streets, and the arguments that the players come across, and the stories and the slanderous rumors going around. It's all caused from this. This is the source. Goal 2. Then he began phase 2, knowing that the distrust of humans by gnomes was his chief weapon. He hired brigands and humanoids from the temple to harass trade along between the Greenway Valley, which is where the majority of the gnomes in the Crown Hills live, and the City of Verbobonc. Goods would disappear, or gnome merchants would report harassment for Verbobonc patrols. The patrols would report slaying groups of orcs or brigands that carried gnomish coin in large quantity. With no caravans in sight with which the wealth could have been stolen, distrust grew from there. And there's one of the adventures, one of the Living Greyhawk modules. There is a instance where one of the caravans was raided by gnomes, or attacked by gnomes, and then that is just one of the things that he set up, one of the things he caused to happen. Goal 3: as the characters arrive, Lakash begins phase 3. So this is the beginning of the campaign session 1. Where he plans to cause the gnomes to be expelled from Verbobonc, and subsequently to cease all trade within the city. So in my previous video, you saw that huge argument, the Archbishop of St. Cuthbert, that big riot in front of the St. Cuthbert's Church, and the other one, the big sermon conducted by the Archbishop of Trithrin at the Cathedral of Trithrin. The players witnessed both of those. And then they witnessed that argument between the jeweler, the jewelry store, and the gnomes in the street. And the town guard shows up to break that up. And then later on that day, some gnomes break into a warehouse and set it afire and explode the whole place. And they're caught red-handed by the guards too. And so all this is caused by a chain of events that day. And one day, session 1 of the campaign, they get the gnomes expelled out of the City of Verbobonc. So the modules I use, the Living Greyhawk modules I use to help pull this all off, is the Core 100, the Citadel, Part 1, 2, and 3. VER 104, How Greenway My Valley, VER 103, The Gift of Beauty, and VER 109, Nights and Days. And actually, there's quite a bit more than this that I'm using, but I'm just saving them for later to be used in the campaign. But these modules right here I'm actively using right now at the beginning of this campaign on Session 1. How I pulled this all together using all this information. Okay, this is a time I think it's best to introduce this noble from Verbobonc. He's a minor noble of Verbobonc City. Alber Guldenstern was the one that having a meeting at Giley's Inn with Connor Bridgeforth here, Lord Bridgeforth, when the players first enter the room to meet Lady Eleanor. So Connor is a slimy, clever, cowardly operator who thrives off political maneuverings in Verbobonc. He's the kind of character you see in all those old movies, where he's at court, the slimy courtier that's always causing all that trouble. So he has become one of the primary contacts at the Cult of Elemental Evil in Verbobonc City. He spends most of his time in court, lobbying for the lords and the merchants, keeping his self-interest close to the cuff. When not in court, he stays at the Jolly's Inn, where he often hosts a dinner party for noble guests. His success comes from getting close to nobles with drinks and food, while picking up tidbits of gossip and information, and using that information to gather even more information and planting misleading rumors among the nobles. He steers gossip and opinions of the nobles to suit the cult's aims. So he is an actual agent of Lakash Quallad. He's under orders from Lakash. One of his crew created an illusion that casts suspicion on Drunchel Burke. He also employs another mercenary called Vundin under the employment of Connor. Vundin has been paid by Connor to watch Lord Drisnell for such opportunities, which is another module called VER 109, Nights and Day. So players will be caught up in that, trying to make this man innocent, to prove this man's innocence. So he's often seen with the successful merchant Lakash at Jolly's, making introductions and merchant deals with nobles of Verbobonc, Veluna, and Thirandi. He's soft-spoken, optimistic, and speaks nonstop, and rather likes the sound of his own voice. His demeanor is somewhat feminine, and he's slimy, clever, cowardly operator that thrives off the political maneuvering in Verbobonc. And there's his information right there. So he's one of the operators here in Verbobonc that's very vital to the organization of the Cult of Elemental Evil. Another agent working for Lakash is Alber Guldenstern. He's the man of shadows and information broker in Verbobonc. He's AKA Version. So whenever he introduces himself to a player character, he'll name himself Version. He'll never use his own real name. So Alber is a rogue, and he arrived in Verbobonc about 7 years ago from Divers. He's a shadowy fixture within the darker side of Verbobonc City. There's a speculation and rumor concerning his origins and activities, but no one seems to really know where he hails from or how he stands out in any observer's memory. Alber is very professional. He performs whatever task his current employer contracts him for. Nothing more, nothing less, and always at a price that he sets. Alber apparently works alone, though he is known that he can be contacted through tavern keepers within Verbobonc City. His hallmarks are that he always succeeds, and he's never seen, and his services are expensive. He's the employee of Lakash. He helps sow dissension within the Viscounty. So I have a description of what he looks like. He's an assassin, 8th level. So he's a really good resource in this campaign as one of the agents for the players to cross. In fact, in Session 1, they do cross him. He's the one that comes out of the shadows after that meeting with Lady Eleanor. To one of the players, he approaches one of the players from the shadows of an alley and whispers warnings about how Lady Eleanor isn't what she seems. They'd be on a lookout. All she's told them at that meeting are complete lies, fabrication of the truth. And he tells them the truth of what's really going on. But, of course, he works for the bad guys. So actually what he's saying is lies, but the players don't know this. So it adds a lot of confusion in the campaign. The players don't know what to think. So they're very suspicious of everything. Okay, we got to talk about the courier of the Temple of Elemental Evil. His name is Lucius Graeme. He's known as the Tentacle. I have a description of what it looks like. He's a very scary guy. And his personality is he's vain and he's cruel. And he was a cruel human nobleman. He's intelligent and cunning, and he will often allow his rage to get better of him. He will lose his cool and rely on brute force to carry the day. He's a man who does what he needs to, and will acquaint himself to blackmail and extortion to avoid any kind of trouble. He will use flattery and sarcasm to attack and weaken his opponents. He misses nothing and will find the narrative from the smallest detail. He's filled with cunning and likes to feign weakness, letting people think he is weak, spending most of his days drinking at the inn, the rowdiest and most dangerous establishment in town. There he gambles, wrestles, and listens to stories told by travelers. He is narcissistic, he's confident, so he's a pretty bad guy. Basically, this is what his duties are. As the Greater Temple Courier Agent, his duties include investigating the activities, the temple contacts, and activities. His network is extensive, reaching from the City of Verbobonc to the borders of Selene into Tolvar and the Greenway Valley. Under the guidance of Hedrack, he ensures the Cult of Elemental God plans to stay on track. When the players are taking out the separate temples and putting on pressure onto the cult, Lucius will start using the Devastation Orbs. The Devastation Orbs are objects of power that create elemental effects in the area, like a tornado or an earthquake. I got those specialized magic items from the 5th edition version of the Temple of Elemental Evil called Apocalyptic Now or something. So, his history. A priest of Uis and a leader of the Temple of Elemental Evil, Lucius was sent by Uis to serve the supreme leader Hedrack, who quickly subverted into following the Elder Elemental Eye. He serves as a courier of the Great Temple to all the agents in the village of Hamlet and other elemental outposts. His network of agents are extensive, and his power and authority to make decisions and guide his agents' efforts into misleading the mounted borderers from Nulb and the elemental outpost, ensuring their rage redirect attention to the gnomes in Tolvar. So he's the guy that goes back and forth in person, physically, to each of the temple outposts, from the Moat House to the Fire, Earth, Water, and Air outposts themselves, and also agents in the City of Verbobonc and all the other small villages like the village of Hamlet. So when somebody needs to show up in person, for whatever reason it is, it's him that shows up under the guise of traveling merchant. And he will use all his cunning to be benign for the players not to suspect him. But he'd probably be the one that's under the window when Zert was talking to somebody outside the village of Hamlet, of the Welcome Wentz. That'll probably be him. If the players try to get to him, he's so powerful and high level that he'd probably vanish with some illusion or invisibility spell or something and get away. But the players might get a glimpse of his face, which would be interesting. But beside that, I really don't think that players will encounter him until they're higher level, until they start getting around more, until they've hit a couple of those outposts already. And then they might hear of him, word of mouth. Because when they start capturing bandits and interrogating them, they're going to start finding out some of this information. One of the reasons why I have this network of NPCs for the temple is because I needed to know who knows who. So if the players capture somebody, I want to know who they know. I want to know all the information that NPC knows so I can share that with the players. Because if you don't, you're just making stuff up off the cuff, the campaign is going to get into trouble really quick if you say the wrong things at the wrong time. You might give away the whole thing. And if you keep this onion layers in effect of where the NPCs only know so much and who they know, and the players will have to unravel this onion to get to the core to find out who's behind all this. It makes the campaign much more interesting and exciting. And this is definitely one of the major NPCs in the campaign that gets around. He's not just one location. So that wraps up all the NPCs that I created for this campaign. I hope this is really useful for you. I'll go ahead and put some of this information on my Patreon where you can get PDF versions of it there to download. I can't share everything I have from specific material, but anything that I made up I can share with you and you can use it in your campaign.
Did you enjoy video? Consider tossing support on my Patreon. It best way to support orcs. If you would like to see more content, subscribe and post comments below. It better not be bad.
I'm really interested in anything you have to share with the campaign. Any NPC agents that you created outside of the temple itself, either be at Greyhawk City or Divers or the City of Verbobonc or maybe along the Wild Coast, because anything that I can add to my campaign will benefit as well, because the more NPCs you have to draw from in a campaign, you'll be much better prepared to deal with the players on what they do and where they go in the campaign. Because the more NPCs you have behind the scenes, the more agents you have in the field, the more you can draw from to add to the campaign at any given time. And I don't have a lot of information about the Wild Coast beyond the A series of modules, A1 through 4, and the list of NPCs I showed you earlier from Nulb. I don't have any actual NPCs keyed or detailed from the Scarlet Brotherhood or the Wild Coast. Do you have any NPCs that you created that you flushed out that actually has connections with the Temple of Elemental Evil when it comes to slaves or trade of information? I mean, I think that would be very useful and valuable to this campaign and add another dimension to the campaign. Or do you have any other agents in Divers, like from the Thieves Guild or Assassins Guild or one of the Lords? I think that'd be very useful as well. Or if you have anything from Thirandi or Veluna or Celine, I'd love to be able to connect the dots and add more to the campaign. If you have any of that, please share that below. I'd like to hear it. Well, thank you for watching. I hope what I shared with you is useful in your campaign, and you have a great time running this long, epic campaign for your players, and they have a good time playing in it. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.